Facebook. Good morning to everybody here in person. Happy to be gathered together on a Sunday morning and to open the heart to the mysteries of life and to really dive into an experience with you this morning is a great pleasure and an honor. So really just a joy to be here, a joy to share my gifts and my ideas with you. And quite a bit of a excursion we're going to go on this morning. So we're going to kind of jump into a time machine. We're going to travel into the ancient world. We're going to be looking at more or less this unified teaching that's showing up in different cultures at different times, and more than just kind of giving you a topographical sort of map of where it's showing up. We're going to drill into a very specific part of it, this secret teaching or secret doctrine, and that is the divine alchemy of bringing pairs of opposites together and thereby creating or revealing this cosmic child, the divinity within us. So that's really what we're here to do, whether we know it or not. So the purpose of life is basically what we're going to be talking about today. The entirety of the physical cosmos and the human experience comes down to this overarching purpose of revealing, or actually in a way, creating, alchemizing this inner divinity within you. And we were talking before service, and it came up, this idea of Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, that Jesus actually refers to himself as the Alpha and Omega in the book of Revelation. And it's at that point in the story in the book of Revelation that all of history is getting wrapped up. All things within the physical universe are being reconciled to this one identity, which is the cosmic Christ. And if you're familiar with the Catholic Jesuit theologian and scientist Teilhard de Chardin, he actually had a very unique understanding that he saw we've emerged through different ages and stages of consciousness. And at this point, we've gone through the biosphere, which is the biological reality that we are animal bodies, right, having a physical experience through biology. Then through the experience of a new emergent field, what he called the nous sphere, which is the mind sphere, we come to the reality of mind objects, experiencing ourselves as mind. And so you're sitting in a mind object. I'm using a mind object to broadcast my voice. We're conceptualizing mind objects. So we are actually living in a nous sphere, a domain of mind. And we're totally identified as this. But yet Teilhard de Chardin said there's another emergent percolating on the horizon of history. And that emergent field he calls the theosphere. And the theosphere is literally, another way of describing it is the omega point. So Teilhard describes it as the omega point. It's the end of history, the end of time as we know it. And what we're going to be doing is going through an emergent experience. Another level of consciousness is going to organically emerge in us. And in this emergent field, instead of just being mind and experiencing mind, theos in Greek is God or divinity. And so it's going to be very natural to be established on the platform of being divine beings. And so what's interesting, if you've noted so far, the biological body is taken up into the mind. So we're using the biological body still. It's integrated. It's integral to us as mind creatures. Well, that same principle of transcend and include is going to go on in the theosphere. So the biological body, the mental body, will be taken up and divinized, alchemized into the golden body of Christ light. So we will still be able to express ourselves within biology, within mind, within concepts, within language, within the objects of the world. But we will have the awareness, the vision, the identity of being true divine beings, our natural state, really. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to look at how, for instance, the ancient Egyptians had this idea clearly in mind, and how that gets, in a way, carried over into ancient Israel. And we have a lot to say about this. So before we jump in to the time machine, I do want to give us a little bit of a preface by Meister Eckhart. And it's pretty much, if you know Dante's Inferno, when Dante's about to enter hell, he sees over the gateway of hell, "Ye who enter, abandon all hope here." It's not that. Whoever doesn't understand, ready? Whoever doesn't understand this sermon shouldn't trouble his heart about it. For as long as a person isn't like this truth, he will not understand this sermon. For it is a naked truth that has come directly from God's heart. May God help us to live in such a way that we experience this truth eternally. More from Meister Eckhart in preparation to enter this experience of the teaching designed to take us into the revelation of the Alpha and Omega, into the revelation of the Theos sphere, the God state. The eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. My eye and God's eye are one eye, seeing one, knowing one, one love. So that's why coming back to this ancient memory of you as the divine cosmic child or the Christ, we have to remove all the trappings of religion and our past programming and conditioning and terminology, whatever may be stuck in the craw about church or religious ideas. Because what it really is talking about is a love that is beyond this world. And a love that is so powerful that it will show up in every area of our life, at every scale of our existence, both in the macrocosm and the microcosm, as the fundamental purpose of what creation's really about. You know, the Jewish mystics or Kabbalists say this, that the entire creation is designed to fill you, the creature, the soul, the vessel, with the utmost abundance of joy and satisfaction. That's the purpose of creation, is to bring this abundant love into you so intimately and directly and immediately that you are overwhelmed with ecstasy and divinity and love and joy and celebration and creativity. So as we begin to go into this experience of embodying the teaching, remember this. This is a gift in the greatest sense imaginable. And what we also want to do is recognize that we are searching for it. That's what brings you into the seats today, having you tune into Facebook today. There is something in the mind that feels this missing and wants it so deeply that it eventually will see it as the utmost and above all else, the most important thing to seek and find in life, which again will be the entire purpose of your existence. So this is why Meister Eckhart will say this: Christ's birth is always happening. And yet, if it doesn't happen in me, how can it help me? Everything depends on that. So again, get out of the terminology of religious belief systems and all that. If you don't reveal your own inner divinity to yourself, if you don't know your true identity, then you don't know anything. You can't understand life. You can't understand relationships. You can't understand success and failure. That's why he says in A Course in Miracles, I'm fond of reminding everyone of this, what you consider your greatest successes have been your greatest defeats. And what you've considered your greatest losses have been your greatest gains. Because we have it upside down. We're trying to make the ego happy. We're trying to make the character that we're playing in the dream, this physical body, happy. And yet underneath, we're missing the entire purpose of our existence. That's why we misinterpret and misperceive everything that's happening to us in our life, because we're seeing it all within the terminology and interpretations of the ego mind. That's the other thing that's beautiful about the Kabbalah. It says that there's really only one power acting in all events, all situations, all forces within creation, and that one power, which is the Creator, simply wants to bestow love on her creation. When we don't understand our own divinity, and we're not aligning with our deeper purpose to reveal that to ourselves, then we're misinterpreting everything. And what is actually coming as a blessing, we'll interpret it as a curse. What is there to actually break us open and reveal this innate divinity, which is what we really are seeking for ourselves, will oftentimes run away from it because we're listening to the wrong voice. We're hearing it through the wrong ears. So this is why Meister Eckhart is saying everything depends on you knowing who you are. This is a beauty. God must act and pour himself into you the moment he finds you ready. Don't imagine that God can be compared to an earthly carpenter who acts or doesn't act as he wishes. Who can will to do something or leave it undone according to his pleasure? It is not that way with God. Where and when God finds you ready, he must act and overflow into you. Just as when the air is clear and pure, the sun must overflow into it and cannot refrain from doing that. So this is another reason why when we're getting ready to step into our time machine, we'll see that it's really a very slight adjustment in our perception. Did you ever see that illustration where if you look at it one way, it's an old lady, and if you look at it another way, it's a young woman? And depending on how you first saw the picture, if you saw it as the old haggard woman with the big nose, it's hard to look and see the young maiden who has her face slightly turned away. You're seeing the same lines of the drawing. You're looking exactly at what you're looking at. Nothing changes. But sometimes it takes somebody to point out, but wait, that's the nose, that's the eye, look at that way. And all of a sudden, it's like the scales came off your eyes and you can now see what you were staring at in a completely different way. That's what this teaching is like. You're looking at it right now. You're actually swimming in it right now. This infinite love, this divine nature, the state of your soul. It's just requiring us to have a readiness to move our attention in a different way, to redirect our attention. And you can feel this because, we're studying Seth now on a weekly basis. And one of the things that Seth is fond at pointing out is that we can actually tune in to our inner senses, which will reveal this other picture of the present moment, where we can then see that God is actually flowing into us every moment and feel it and experience it. But we have to become less and less fixated on the 5 physical senses, especially the eyes. We're always kind of looking out through our forehead and our eyes, and our eyes are showing us stuff that's all separate from stuff, objects that are different and, distinguishable, separated. And that was really the whole story, because let me say it this way as we get into the time machine. One of the ways that we're going to be looking differently at these teachings, especially in the ancient Israelite tradition, is that we will be looking at that picture that we knew so well, and now we're going to actually shift our perception a little bit and see it in an entirely different way. And the reason for that is that these teachings, especially within the all-familiar Judeo-Christian tradition, are coded. There are ciphers, there are symbols, there's an esoteric mystery dimension, a hidden dimension to these teachings. Growing up in our culture, we've only been given the literal and the moral interpretations of these traditions. That's why Yogananda was so fond at pointing out these hidden metaphysical principles, even some aspects of the Kriya Yoga within the ministry of Paul and Jesus and Elijah and Moses, and showing how these symbols can be malleable to a very different interior awakening experience. But it does require our readiness and a bit of malleability in shifting our attention to see the same lines, the same features that we're looking at in a very different way. Okay? And then finishing here. Our bodily food is changed into us. We could all see that. That's why, in the yoga tradition, the physical sheath or the physical body is referred to as annamaya kosha. And anna in Sanskrit means food. So your body is literally food. And if you get around a hungry tiger, you can actually experience that firsthand. So let's just say this, that, the food you ate, for lunch yesterday is now part of the cells in your liver and the cells in your heart. And you're literally assimilating that food into you. It becomes your organism. So he's saying our bodily food is changed into us. But our spiritual food changes us into itself. So this is why, we're going to look at the story of the Garden of Eden. And that, when Eve approaches that forbidden tree of good and evil, it says in the text that she sees it with her eyes and it's pleasant to look upon. And she begins to desire the food because she's looking at it with her eyes. And when she takes that food, you see, this is a very important metaphor to get. She eats that fruit. This is, again, a symbol, when taken literally, borders on the ridiculous. But when taken esoterically, it shows you that this duality way of perceiving life, this fruit of good and evil, becomes part of us. Once we eat that fruit, we now have ingested and integrated a completely different system of consciousness that has us seeing the forces and events and situations and energies of creation in a very specific way, dualistically. And we are now seeing things in choices of good and evil, right and wrong, good and bad. And it's really important to get this, that after eating that fruit and basically having that court scene as to who was the one that did it, they're out of the garden. And before they leave the garden, God gives them, it says in the text, coats of skin. Okay, so they're leaving the garden and they put on coats of skin. Now, some ancient teachers like Origen, one of the early church fathers, said, well, this is us leaving the higher world. We were one with God, and now we're stuck in density. We're stuck in matter. These coats of skin are the physical bodies that we now have because we split our minds from the Creator, and we don't know ourselves anymore. We're now animal bodies, skin, and we're seeing everything in life from the perspective of skin. Now, what's really fascinating here that the Kabbalists point out is in the Hebrew, it's the term garments of skin, katnot or. The word skin is or in Hebrew, and it's spelled, and bear with me on this technicality, you'll like it. The word for skin is ayin vav resh. That's how you spell or, skin. The Kabbalists say, look, there's a hidden code or cipher in this. If you were to realize that the Hebrew word for light is aleph vav resh, or, sounds the same. One letter is different. And what's really fascinating about this one letter is the letter that gives us the word skin means eyes. Ayin. Ayin vav resh, skin. Ayin has its own name, and that name in Hebrew, ayin, means eyes. That's why the Hebrew language is like a computer code. It's very dense, a lot of information in each letter. So in other words, when you look at life from the perspective of skin, you're going to be outside of the garden. And remember the curse. You're going to struggle in life. You're going to try to be working the land in whatever way you're working in life, and instead of getting the fruits that satisfy you, a lot of the times you're getting thorns and thistles. You're struggling. It's not easy when you look at life through the eyes of the skin. That one letter can change, like we said, from ayin to aleph, and it would spell light instead of skin. The aleph is actually a silent letter. It's like a breath. It's silent. So what they're saying here is when you become quiet within and you begin to listen within, not see through your eyes and figure things out through your own rating system of good and bad, give up your judgment of good and bad. You don't know what anything is really doing because you're not in touch with your true identity. You don't know the purpose of your life, which is to just receive God's love and be full. So like Jesus said in the Course in Miracles, resign as your own teacher now. You've taught yourself badly. You're seeing things entirely skewed because you're seeing them through the eyes of your flesh. When you get quiet and you listen for the aleph, this inner sound begins to emerge. And this is the most sacred prayer in Judaism. It's said through all the prayer services 3 times a day, and that is Shema. Listen. Don't look with your eyes, because that'll mess you up. Get quiet, tune into the light, and listen. Shema. What are you going to listen to? Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. The Lord your God, the Lord is one, right? That's what we hear in the literal religious way. But there's a code. There's a deeper secret meaning. They're using 2 different divine names in that prayer. Adonai is the name that we use in the German transliteration, Jehovah, right? It actually in Hebrew it has 4 letters. It's called the Tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name. The other name that's given in the prayer is Elohim. And that actually is a plural word. It actually, if you were to translate it literally, means gods. But it really is in this prayer referring to the plurality. So the first name refers to the utterly transcendent God beyond space and time, the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh, Jehovah. The second divine name means the plurality of creation, the forces and forms and beings within creation, Elohim, the manifestation, the cosmos. What's the prayer saying? They're Echad. They are actually a unity. So when you listen and get quiet and put aside your good and bad judgments, instead of seeing from your own perspective, you begin to allow this teaching to eat you. Right? Remember what Meister Eckhart said. When you eat physical food, you change it into you. When you allow the divine teaching to eat you, you're changed into it. And that's the only way you're going to understand this sermon. Remember? You can't understand this sermon unless you begin to detect this. So a little bit from Hafiz here. An infant in your arms. The tide of my love has risen so high, let me flood over you. Close your eyes for a moment, and maybe all your fears and fantasies will end. If that happened, God would become an infant in your arms, and then you would have to nurse all creation. So close your eyes for a moment, and maybe all your fears and fantasies will end. All of your good and bad thoughts will end. All of your judgments will end in the silence. If that happened, God would become an infant in your arms. In other words, this hidden divinity will begin to birth in your awareness. You will turn your attention away from the outer world of the skin and toward the inner world of the light. When you begin to focus on something and pay attention to it, this is the magic of your mind. You make it real. You bring it into manifestation. When you begin to turn your attention to focus on the divinity within you, you will bring it into birth. And as you begin to bring it into birth and you hear this happening within you, this divine voice beginning to emerge, you'll realize that all of creation is set to this purpose, to reveal this love in all. This is why at the last stage of our journey today, we're going to see how this has to be where we are now if we're going to find peace in our life and bring this world to a better place. Because what we are doing right now when we don't know ourselves is we're actually contributing, whether we are conscious of it or not. We are contributing to the chaos because we don't have the light. We're still operating as skin. Even if we have good choices and good intentions, it's still within the duality of good and evil. It ain't going to cut it. That's why you have to let this teaching assimilate you. You're going to go into a higher state of mind, a completely different mental state. When you're ready, it will happen for you. When you're quiet. And as this happens, he says, we will then nurse all creation. We'll feed it. We'll take care of it. We'll be compassionate in all of our doings and dealings. Because we'll begin to see through the inner eyes of sanity. That's why our last stop on the way today is this section in A Course in Miracles, and the section's entitled, Only the Different Can Attack. Only the different can attack. If you're listening to this inner voice that says that the eternal and the time-bound experiences are one unity, that it's all God, actually. There's nothing other than him, her, here. You're looking at God. But we're seeing the old haggard woman. We're not seeing the other face. because we're so set on a default view of seeing those lines, this room, this body, this situation, these people, in that one setting of eyes and skin. God is here. It says in A Course in Miracles, the ego looks directly at the Father and doesn't see him. So just pause for a moment, suspend your good and bad thoughts and even your concepts. What if that's true? What if that's really true? And all that's required is that you be ready to accept that truth, to accept that love back into your heart. Then God would flow over and through you. Then you would be fulfilling the purpose of your creation. And when you get aligned with your purpose, which is to be filled with the love of God, the peace of God, the strength of God, the wisdom of God, when you allow that to happen for you, all you'll want to do is take care of people, help people, love people, even when they're not acting in a way that seems to be loving. Because you would have then found your purpose, which is reality itself, and there's really no disagreement in reality, so you're solid. You see above and below as one unity. There's nothing that will come along that will go, you can't believe that, because it'll be existing at such a superficial level as to compare to where you are now. You'd just be like, it's like the ramblings of a deluded child. There's only one. And the only response to anyone who's not in the love is kindness and compassion. And whatever skillful way your inner guidance tells you to act. We looked at this on Thursday night in the course group, that when we look upon our situation, if we do this with the eyes of the Holy Spirit, there's really only one interpretation that's possible. That is, either somebody is acting loving or somebody is crying or calling for love. That's it. So that the purpose of life is to be filled with love. If you're not living your purpose, you're suffering. And the reason why you're suffering is because you don't have the love of God overflowing your heart. The only sane thing to do is be ready yourself to receive it. And once you're allowing yourself to receive it, you will then recognize everybody's shared need. Everyone. Even politicians. Don't get me started. Really, what if you framed everything within that context? Knowing that you're eternally safe. See, this is what we don't factor in. We think that people have their hands on the levers of power, and they're bumbling idiots, and they're messing everything up, and they're giving everything to their corrupt buddies that own the big corporations, and they're spreading disease and war all over the planet to control things. At least that's the way it appears to me through the eyes of the skin. What if you were eternally safe? And none of that mattered, and they didn't really have their hands on the levers of power. Or take it into your immediate relationships. What if you were eternally safe and grounded in a love that doesn't depend on how other people show up or not? You're not fazed by their cries and acts for love. In fact, when somebody is showing up unloving, and they're really, if you see it through these deeper eyes, they're asking for love, crying for it, then your only sane response is to give love, support, comfort, in a skillful way. If you were to treat others like that, he says in A Course in Miracles, you would actually be strengthening the love within your mind, because now you'll see everyone's cry as an opportunity for you to reveal this divine love in your own self. That's it. So you can boil down all the complexity to this one truth. Everything is actually there, happening for you to reveal the love within you. It's all divinely designed so that you would allow love back into your awareness and let it flood you. If you show up in your relationships or in your interpretations of politicians or what have you, unloving, reactive, hating, judging, blaming, then you're actually saying, I don't want to be healed. I don't want to feel safe. I don't want to be happy. And you're the cause of it. But that's just the final trick that we play on ourselves. We're not ever at the effect level of somebody else making us feel the way we feel. We've interpreted the situation in a certain way. That interpretation will make us feel what we feel. So the one interpretation to all motivation is it's either an act of love or a cry for love. When we start giving love, thought, speech, and acts of love, then we actually are starting to really get on board with our purpose. And that has profound effects because your body's tired, your body's sick, your body's hurting, your emotions are erratic, you're feeling depressed, your mind is cloudy and confused, and you feel a lot of anxiety because you're not acting in alignment with your true purpose, which is to receive and give love. Is this kind of clear? Love is the funeral pyre. Love is the funeral pyre where I have laid my living body. All the false notions of myself that once caused fear, pain, have turned to ash as I neared God. What has risen from the tangled web of thought and sinew now shines with jubilation through the eyes of angels and screams from the guts of infinite existence itself. Love is the funeral pyre where the heart must lay its body. So to be utterly taken over by love, divine love, God's love, is to re-enter Eden, is to go through this alchemy where you transform the body of skin and sinew into the body of light by laying your heart on the funeral pyre of love. And you can do, this is why it's so simple. You can do it right now. You can do it anytime you're ready. And you will begin to align with a purpose that transcends the little you. And this is what, we were talking about, how we get so upset sometimes because we feel so powerless to do anything in the world, where these sociopathic leaders have their hands on the levers of power and they're just doing the stupidest, most insane things. What if, again, that isn't the power to do anything? What if that's all just a sick little children's game? And if you were to lay your heart on the funeral pyre of love and let all of your thoughts about what you think's going on turn to ash, and allow this body of light to replace your body of skin, you would actually realign, reconnect into the true power that is governing all of life. And it has, again, profound effects, not only in the big world, but in the little world. In every little granular moment in your relationship exchanges with your intimate partners and loved ones and whoever you're meeting casually, whatever is that exchange, it will be done from this place of true peaceful power within you. But we actually have to undergo this burning away of those false beliefs. And this gets us back to that secret tradition within the Hebrew Bible and the Judeo-Christian symbology. So you know that the coats of skin, right? This is one of the ways that the rabbis say the sacrificial system was instituted. Right? Now there's the death of an animal that's connected to leaving Eden. And if you know anything about the Mosaic tradition, you have the tabernacle in the wilderness, and you have the temple later on in Jerusalem. And every day you have to go there and offer up animals, bulls and goats and pigeons and sheep. And all of that to say that it's the burning away of the animal nature, right? Taken in an overly literal sense. Now here's the rub, and they were very astute at recognizing this. When Abraham is taking his son Isaac up the mountain, okay? Now just a little quick backstory. Abraham's been waiting his whole life for Isaac. He's now 120 years old. The guy doesn't have much hope in fathering another child. He finally, against all odds, got his beloved son, which would then pass the lineage and the promises of God onto Isaac for generation after generation. He has finally succeeded. And then he gets the voice telling him, you know, you got to sacrifice your son Isaac. So he dutifully obeys, we're told in the text, totally trusts that even in this difficult situation, there's divinity working. Nothing is operating outside of the one power, no matter what it looks like. I trust. Takes Isaac up the mountain. As they're going up, Isaac says to his father, you know, we got the wood, we got the knife, where's the lamb for the slaughter? And this is the important part that I wanted to bring out. Abraham says something that becomes a divine name. He says, Adonai Yahweh Yireh, God will see to it. Now, in the Hebrew Bible, they constantly play on seeing and hearing. And they're showing us through all of these stories, check it out if you don't know it already, every time people are looking on their own and going after the desires of their own heart and doing what's right in their own eyes, they end up in disaster. Abraham's in the crisis of his life. And what he actually says is, I'm not going to see this. I'm not going to look at this. God's going to look at it for me. That's how you'll shift from pain to peace, from sickness to health, from death to life. And then the ram is caught in the thicket, the animal nature is slain on the altar, and father and son go down the mountain, and they are complete. So again, these are inner psychological events within these sacred teachings to be assimilated, to allow them to eat you. So whatever you're going through right now, the crisis, the trouble, these hard things to look at in the news, which, you know, turn on your news feed and There they are every day. It's insane. It's the climate crisis. I mean, I was just saying to Lisa, it's freaking everywhere. Climate crisis and oil spills, and it's just ongoing madness. And if you're looking at it through your own eyes, there's no hope. There really isn't. And when you think you're living in such a world, you're going to take it out on the people that you love because you're not in a safe place. You don't feel secure. You're not at peace. And even though you're trying your best, making your good choices and your good intentions, that deeper need isn't being satisfied. And you feel troubled. And sometimes you just are ornery because of it. So when you have this attitude that we just said in the story of Abraham, where it could be the worst possible news that you ever had in your life, where you worked your whole life for something and now it's being taken away. But if you realize that it's still fulfilling the purpose of revealing infinite love in you, and you don't see it through your own eyes, and you allow God to see it for you, you'll return to a place of peace that you didn't know was there. But you have to let go. As Hafiz was saying, you have to let go of all of your false notions of yourself that once caused fear and pain. And then watch. Because one of the things that I see oftentimes when we get to these critical junctures, like in a conversation like this, if you're not ready for the teaching, remember what he says. He says, I lost it. If you're not ready for the teaching, you can't hear any of this, and the ego is going to try to pull you away. So if you're ready to give up all of your thoughts about yourself that are causing you fear and pain, you'll have a completely new moment. You know, again, Yogananda had this idea in Kriya Yoga where when you're doing the Kriyas, the breathing practices, you're dissolving the identity of the ego moment by moment. Every day you're melting it down. You're going back into this cosmic breath. And because he had that experience within his tradition, he recognized when St. Paul said, "In Christ I die daily." In other words, if you're going to be your true identity, the Christ mind, you have to, as the little self, die daily. Whenever you're dealing with these thoughts of fear and pain and belief that you're physically sick and you're stuck in your life and your relationships aren't working, you have to die to those interpretations. I remember now a talk that I gave years ago. I think I titled it, "Why don't you go ahead and die already?" In other words, end this version of yourself because another one's waiting to happen. It's on the horizon, ready for birth. Many of us are actually experiencing that early stage of it. It's starting to really blend in. We're starting to really step across the threshold. So, ending here. This is A Course in Miracles where it says, only the different can attack. On your learning depends the welfare of the world. Right? On your learning depends the welfare of the world. In other words, again, what we've been saying here is we're to give birth to the cosmic child. this divine nature that will then shine light and love into other minds that don't know their purpose and don't realize that they have the love within them that would satisfy all their fears and needs. On your learning depends the welfare of the world, and it is only arrogance that would deny the power of your will. You do not see that every sin and every condemnation which you perceive and justify is actually an attack on God. So remember, this is only the different can attack. And if God is working through all things to bring infinite love back into your heart, then even the people that are showing up the way they're showing up, if you misinterpret that and you make them an enemy, then you are showing up as one who is attacking the blessings that are coming to you. Now, does that mean that you throw all wisdom to the winds and you just hug everybody and give everything away if they're asking for it? No, you still act skillfully. But here's where it's really important. You're not in your heart believing they're your enemy. You're at peace. You really get to that place where you're no longer wanting them to fail or suffer. You realize they're actually crying for love. And maybe they're misdirected in how they're trying to go about getting their love. It can be completely off. It could be criminal. So you're not going to aid and abet dysfunctional, toxic, criminal behavior because you're loving. But you're not going to make them an enemy. And you're going to will that they find love and do whatever is in your power through thought, speech, and action to give them the love that they may be asking for in the way that you're being guided. And remember, as you do this, you not only nurse the world, but you heal yourself. They're showing up in your dream to give you the opportunity to extend love to them, healing to them, so that you can be healed. You can't do it without having given it first. That's just the way creation works. You give what you receive. Then you realize that you have it to give. So if you're fighting and resisting and you're bitter, you're going to feel worse. Your illness will get worse. Your troubles will get worse. More anxiety, more bad news, more trouble. Because you're ignoring the opportunities. In fact, you're turning God into your enemy. Crazy as that sounds. If you are one with him and recognize this oneness, you would know his power is yours. But you will not remember this while you believe attack of any kind is meaningful. You'll have God's power. You'll have God's peace. You'll have God's security. But if you're attacking anyone, you won't know it. And then finally, the light that joins you shines throughout the universe. And because it joins you, so it makes you one with your Creator. And in him is all creation joined. Would you regret you cannot fear alone when your relationships can also teach the power of love is here, which makes all fear impossible? do not attempt to keep a little of the ego with this gift, for it was given to be used and not obscured. What teaches you that you cannot separate denies the ego. Let truth decide if you be different or the same, and teach you which is true. So, again, to bring this to a close, we are in trying times as a species, as a human society. The only way out, I've given this a lot of thought and seen it from a lot of different angles. The only thing that makes sense to me, the only way out, is that we have to actually step into our true purpose now and be the light and the love that this planet needs. It's the only way out. Anything else is going to add to the chorus of pain and confusion. So love is the only reality and the only power. And it's showing up in your life right now. You're looking right at it. But if your eyes are showing you the haggard old woman, it's giving you the cue to say you got to start to actually shift your consciousness and give up these old beliefs so that you can see this as the opportunity to give love so that you may have it. Blue bag's going to go around. Any thoughts, questions here? We are very grateful for the offering, and we just bless it with the intention that it be a seed of light in the world, sown into the hearts and minds and all that it touches, and may it be a way of remembering that we are truly loved and truly loving beings, and so it is. Amen. All right, my friends, we can rise, seal the deal with our prayer. Resting in the quiet of the heart, opening to the silence. Let us go from this place with that inner awakened listening for the guidance of God, recognizing the signs of God as they are showing up in our life, these opportunities to heal, to give love, and to receive love that are being constantly offered. May we truly find this in ourselves and truly give it to others, that we may know that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. Amen. And tomorrow night, Course in Miracles, 7:15 p.m. in the classroom. Join us. Talk to you guys later.